Hi kids, I have here with me some mail. I received this mail from Miss O'Malley. She wanted to give me your questions to answer, your questions that you had for a priest, and I so happen to be a priest. My name is Father Jay. You may have seen me around at Religious Ed at Chapel, and I wanted to answer some of these questions for you. So what questions did you have? So one question says, at what age did you know you wanted to become a priest? Well, I wasn't one of those who knew I wanted to be a priest when I was a young little boy. It wasn't until I was around college age. And so it's been about 10 years, rather more than 10 years, since I realized I wanted to join the priesthood. So that was around 2012, 2013 that I decided that I wanted to be a priest. We have another question. How long did you go to school to become a priest? So the school that one goes to become a priest is called a seminary. And so I was in the seminary for 6 years. But that can vary from person to person depending how much education they already had. So I already was in school for 6 years pursuing different degrees, but finally getting one in accounting. And after that, I decided to enter into the priesthood for 6 more years of school. So I went to Mundelein Seminary for my education to become a priest. So next question, do you live at the church? Technically, I don't. I live in a house up the street. And this house that's reserved for priests is called a rectory. And so me and Father Arthur, we live together in the rectory, and it's in the same neighborhood as Centennial School. But some priests do live at the church. Some priests have the rectory connected to their church. But for us, we don't. We live in a neighborhood up the street, just 5 minutes away. So this is an interesting question. When was the first time you went to church? So I would say the first time I wasn't fully aware of it was when I was in my mother's womb. When she was pregnant with me, she was probably going to the church while I was still in her womb. So yeah, I wasn't aware of it. I was still growing inside my mother's tummy. Next question is, do you have a dog and can you have one? I do not have a dog. Father Arthur does not have a dog, but you are able to have a dog. I did stay with a priest before I became one for the summer who owned a dog. His name was Father Matt Numchowski. He was a pastor of Mater Christi Catholic Church. And so I stayed with him one summer. As I was going to the hospital, he had his own dog. So if I really wanted to, I could own a dog or a pet as well. In fact, there have been pets in our rectory in the past before I came to live here with St. Francis. The next question is, what does your mom call you? Well, my mom still calls me by my first name, Jay, just because that's how she knows me from since she gave birth to me. And she gave me my name. And so she continues to call me Jay. And close friends tend to call me by my first name, but some still call me Father Jay as well. And so that's only reserved for close members of the family to still call me by my first name. So the next question is, why don't priests get married and have children? Well, in one sense, we're called to imitate Christ. We are meant to be walking images of Jesus on earth. And so we try to imitate his life as closely as possible. And so Jesus, when he did his ministry, he was not married. He did not have children either. He was solely focused on building the church and pointing people towards heaven. And so that's my role as well. As one who is a priest, I'm called to be an image of Christ. And so we imitate that same discipline to not have children, to not be married. at least in the typical sense. But in another sense, you can say that I am married to the church. And when we say one is married, that means one is fully dedicated to another person. And in this sense, I'm fully dedicated to the church for the rest of my life. And there's a reason why we're called fathers as well. Father Arthur, Father Jay, Father Ed. It's because, if you're a father, that means you have children as well that you're meant to father. And while I don't have any biological children, the people that I'm called to minister to are meant to be like my spiritual children. So while you might not be my biological children, you may not come from my own DNA or flesh, spiritually, I'm called to be your spiritual father, and I am called to see you as my spiritual children. So in the sense, yeah, I can still be married. Yes, I can still have children, but in a different sense. So next question is, do I have any brothers or sisters? I have one older brother. He is 2.5 years older. His name is Josh. He lives in California. He kind of travels a lot because he can work remotely, and he travels with his wife, Snow. Another question, what happens if you move from your church? So which church I'm at is determined by our bishop and our main bishop, which we call the archbishop, who happens also to be a cardinal. So our cardinal, our archbishop is Archbishop Blaise Cupich. And when I'm ordained, I become an extension of the bishop of a particular region. And so our Cardinal Cupich, or Archbishop Cupich, is our bishop, and I am an extension of him. And so if he decides I need to go somewhere else, then I go wherever he asks me to. And so if I were to move from this church, I would be at another church, typically. So another question is it hard to be a priest? Or is it hard being a priest? I think just like with any occupation, any job, it always comes with its hardships because there's responsibilities. We're, as priests, responsible spiritually for other people. And that means being there for people at very different moments in their lives. We're called to be there at the beginning of one's life, when someone is baptized, or at the very end of one's life, when we say a funeral, when someone is dying. We are there for all kinds of moments, from some very joyous moments to the very hard moments in which people are struggling. And so one of the hardest parts about being a priest is that sometimes we encounter those different range of moments all in the same day, or maybe even the same hour. We're there for a very happy moment, but we're also there for a very sad moment. So it's hard to adjust between those things and trying to minister to them, to say the right things for people, to be present to each other. And so it can be very stressful. It's very rewarding at the same time to see how it can change and affect people when you're there to minister to them, to bring God to people, to help people pray. And that's another question that I wanted to answer. Is it fun being a priest? Yeah, absolutely. It's fun getting to know different kinds of people, knowing different kinds of things about their lives and what gives them joy, and that gives me joy as well. I get to spend time with people I never would have had the opportunity to spend time with if I just had a different occupation. Being a priest means being there for as many people as I can, bringing the gospel, bringing Jesus to those who need it. And it's such a blessing to witness when people are able to see the value of God in their lives. So the last question I want to answer is a unique one. And that's why I saved it for last. And the question is, how did God create the solar system? And I'm not a scientist, and there is some scientific explanation that can go into that, but I'll try my best. But how I would describe that is, I would start from the very beginning, how God created the universe in the first place. And the scientific explanation that goes into that would be a theory that's called the Big Bang Theory. A theory that's actually came into existence because of a priest. The priest came up with this idea of the Big Bang. His name was Georges Lemaitre. It's the idea that the entire universe came about from this tiny, super dense particle that exploded into existence. And we can say that God used this little particle and set forth this big explosion in order to create the universe. And with this explosion came forth this entire world, universe, in which was ordered by a set of rules and systems in which how things moved, how things reacted, how things interacted, how things slowed down, how things collided. Through all these complex systems of the universe, where the stars were able to form, planets were able to form, galaxies, and everything that our eyes can conceivably see in the sky came into existence because of all these complex systems. And a part of that system that eventually formed is the solar system, which happened about 4.7 billion years ago. And so that's kind of my explanation of how God created not only the solar system, but the entire universe. It came forth from the very beginning, from this Big Bang. So I hope that answered most of your questions. I hope I answered them well. Hope you learned something about me, about priesthood. If you have any other questions, feel free to ask us in person. Me, Father Jay, or Father Arthur. You might see Father Rich over the weekend, or Father Ed on the weekends as well when you go to Mass. We're always happy to answer any of your questions. So God bless and enjoy the rest of your day.